Hi, hello, and welcome to Get Another Expat. This is episode 73. Wow, that's a number I hope we make it to. Enjoying the sweet life of a pensioner while the planet is dying out of global warming. But I won't start with that. That's not a good start. Hi, thanks for joining this podcast. Now, for this week, I have a few news coming from in and out covering nature, British royalty, microplastics, Greece, MTV, and dreams. But also, first up, quick headlines from Berlin. One thing, kitas are closing due to the lack of children. There's a broader demographic shift in Germany's fertility. It has fallen, and Berlin is the nation's lowest rate, according to the Federal Statistical Office, which is a good thing if you have a child and you are trying to find spots in kitas, kindergartens. But there will be policy changes from the 1st of January 2026. They will improve the ratio of staff to child, like how many caretakers are per child. At the moment, it's an average about 1 to 4, so 1 carer per 4 children, and that will go to 0.5 children per educator. So basically, an educator will be having 2 children. I don't know how they're going to do that. It seems insane to have so many educators for children in kindergartens, but if they do, that would be great. An ice rink stadium will open in Neukölln if you like ice skating. This will happen in November. But maybe most importantly, there was a decision to give money back to a tenant that made a lawsuit against the landlords. Berlin has a crazy rent spike. It has been over 40% in 3 years. And now it turns out that some of the renters are taking their landlords to court and winning. But before we get into any more news, here's a quickie. How was my week? Well, first up, I went to a baby group. And there were like an insane amount of babies there. I have not seen so many babies gathered in one place. It's a weird thing to witness. If you see one baby on the metro or around, I usually observe them, trying to guess their age, checking their motor skills or how they're dressed. But stepping into a family center group with 30 babies, my brain was overstimulated. There's so much going on. I don't know how to describe it. It almost feels like walking into a pet store filled with puppies, but the puppies can also have a tantrum and start crying. But yeah, that was real. I cannot describe how surreal it is to be surrounded by 30 babies. And my competitiveness just kicked in. I wanted my baby to be the best baby out of all the babies, but I really put it down. I try not to think about it, because as I told you, some kids are crawling more, or they are more, clapping their hands or balancing out. And our child, he is moving but stationary. He's crawling sideways. He can do circles around himself and his proximity, like a dolphin that gets washed on the shore and cannot find its way back in. It just needs to be pushed to go two directions. But we had a pretty fun time, and it was interesting to be surrounded by these little babies. 1 or 2 came crawling to me, because this is what they do. They just crawl around, and then they look at your face, and then you need to smile. And I have a beard. Beards can be intimidating for children. So this one baby came in front of me crawling. I think it was 10 months old. Then it grabbed me and tried to stand up. It stood up. I was sitting on the ground. And then he, made eye contact with me for minutes straight, like not blinking, just looking into my eyes. And I was smiling. I was saying, hello. But there was nothing. The baby was just consuming me. And then at some point, the baby extended the hand and touched my beard. And then it felt like the most important moment for it. Put the hand down, brought the other hand up, touched my beard again, and then turned around and left. I don't know. I think that baby was smarter than me. I don't know what it was thinking. But we had that experience, and having other babies touch your baby and do that. They're not fully humans yet. Like, they don't really interact. They just crawl around or not. And then when they meet, maybe they extend the hand to the hair. Some babies pull other babies' hair, and some babies steal other babies' toys. So this is a little bit how the interaction goes, but still very interesting to see your little human with other little humans. In other news, do you remember last time where I said, oh, there is all these feeding things you need to do in the right way? Back in the day, they probably just threw a bone at the child's way and said, hey, here's some food, try to make it work. Well, on that note, I made bone marrow for him. Bone marrow is insanely nutritious. I saw it online and I thought, that's something I can try. I never cook meat, by the way. I eat meat, but I don't cook it that often. And I've never had this bone knuckles. I didn't even know they sell it in the butcher place, but they do. And so we made bone marrow, and it makes sense that it's insanely nutritious. I guess it's what kids have been eating back when we were in caves. It's the gooey part of what was left from the food. But yeah, it has a shit ton of good things. It smelled very intensely, and he loved it. So this is how the eating goes. He also learned now that the same way I give him spoons, sometimes he extends things to me. He finds that very amusing. So I'm trying to be kind and thank him, but at the same time say, hey, buddy, this is not how it goes. You're the one supposed to be eating. Don't be a people pleaser already. It's like, hey, you want some of this? No, you should have some. No, you should have some. But yeah, sometimes I don't wait for his mouth to open. I just bring the spoon there, find my way in, and then he eats a lot these days. So this is good. This is on baby life. And then myself, I went to swim. Finally, I found a place to swim. It's the Neukölln Schwimmbad, the best place in Berlin. So beautiful. It feels like you're swimming inside an old Roman temple. They've completely renovated it. It has sea lions, fountains of water dripping in, little angels flying on clams. Is it called clams? Yeah, the thing that has the pearl. There is a lot of painting and artwork on the walls. It just looks like one of these amazing buildings of the 1900s. So that felt very good. You know, if you haven't done swimming in some time, I think you should. Swimming is as close as we get to flying. It's as close as you get to zero gravity. I just feel, I don't know how to say it. You know, sometimes when you yawn and you feel like you want to stretch, and then you stretch, but it's not enough stretching. Somehow your brain, your body wishes that you could stretch even more, that you could stretch out longer and longer, like you're some dope little kid's toy that can just extend. Well, in a way, I feel that my body and my brain can stretch in the relaxing sense of stretching when I am in the water. So this was great. Let's see if I do it again. I've told you how this version of me is the heaviest that has ever existed. Maybe I need to take the place of the sea lion statues, fountains inside that old swimming pool. But this was a start. So let's see how it goes. I also order my vitamin D, preparing for the light to soon disappear, and I managed to reply to messages. You know, my median response time has fallen down to maybe 1 week or so. I just can't. There's so much interruption, but I managed to do it. Why did I start with the personal updates? It's like the most boring part. This podcast has no hook in the beginning. You need to make it work. I'll bring the topics now. But you know, as the global powers are ramping up, spending money for weapons and defenses instead of putting money into a social state or public infrastructure or healthcare or education, you know, all these things that people actually care about. Here we are talking about how we're going to be having wars with each other while the planet is dying. Now let's cover some headlines from last week and get this podcast episode out. Boom, boom, boom. Royal family drama. Prince Andrew is no longer a prince. Oh my God. In this time and age, isn't it a weird thing to talk about kings, queens, and kingdoms and all of that? It is a leftover thing of the past, but anyways, apparently the most shocking thing happening in Britain right now, it's not the fact that the government has stopped a case about prosecuting two Chinese spies because they are afraid that China will suffocate them economically. No, no, no. It's the fact that the Duke has no longer been duking. So after years of allegations, veering from sex assault to friendship with a sex trafficking pedophile, who could that be, to actually meeting with Chinese spies himself, Andrew has finally moved to do the right thing. He voluntarily, completely voluntarily, stepped out of his title. He gave up on his title. What? My world will never be the same. Now that Prince Andrew is no longer a duke, that means so much to me. All these parties with Epstein and all the allegations around him, an entire life filled with scandals, but now at the age of, how old is he even? He's so old now, saying, hey, you know what? I hear everything everyone is saying to me. I hear all the allegations, and you know what I will do? I will give up the title of the Duke. What a beautiful way to bring justice. What a beautiful way to show humility. They're probably afraid there's even more allegations to come out, and this will be their way of saying, well, we took his title away, so that happened. Now, in insanely more interesting news, the MTV channel is finally shutting down after 44 years. In case you didn't know, now you know. It's Paramount Global. We've talked about this beautiful company before. It announced that all MTV channels in Europe, MTV Music, MTV 90s, and all of that will stop broadcasting by December 31st this year. The only channel that will survive is MTV HD, but it's only playing stupid reality shows like Naked Dating in the UK or Geordie Shore, which is some kind of Jersey Shore equivalent. What a downfall for the channel that taught us music in the 90s and the 2000s. Originally launched in 1981, it really shaped global music culture, blending sound and image into a new art form. It was MTV that brought the first video clips and visuals into music. By the way, the first ever video that was aired was the Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles. Pretty prophetic. I guess streaming killed the video star now. But MTV used to be the home of legends like Madonna and Britney Spears and Nirvana and Michael Jackson, and later shifted into this weird reality TV. But I still remember when MTV came to Greece, it was one of the coolest channels to have around, listening to music non-stop. Seeing the Evanescence video bring me to life, and me with my sister knowing all the words in part English, part Greek, cosplaying the video clips, Robin Williams. I just wanna feel real love, and seeing him hanging upside down or in that bathtub. So many fond memories. Well, thank you, MTV. It's been a pleasure. I also think you showed me South Park, or the Pirate Bay did. I don't remember who did it first. Thanks for the memories, and Godspeed. But just because MTV won't be working anymore doesn't mean that the Greeks can also stop working. What a stupid way to connect these two pieces of news. Apparently, the Greek government is pushing a 13-hour workday, and they say that this is for the benefit of the workers. They say if someone wants to work more in order to be able to afford housing and necessities, then why not extend the working hours to 13? Well, the government says this makes the workers very happy because they can now bring more income. One might guess that what the workers would really like would be for the government to do something about Greece having one of the lowest salaries in EU, one of the lowest purchasing powers in EU. That means the amount of money that you're able to spend towards things once you remove the cost of living, the cost of energy, the cost of necessities. So instead of doing anything to help with inflated prices, with the economic cartel around the electricity grid and the powers there, basic food, just put people in 13-hour daily shifts. How is someone working 13 hours going to sleep, going to cook, going to clean, going to take care of a baby? No one really knows. This has been introduced by the Minister of Labour, Nikki Kerameus, who this year she reported more than €1 million in her bank accounts. So I'm pretty sure she knows a lot about how it is trying to make ends meet at the end of the month. Every single party, union, and the opposition forces are calling for strikes demanding the bill's withdrawal, sending Greece back to the Middle Ages in terms of workers' rights. But this bill passed through only with the votes of the current party. They were the only ones who voted it, and Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, as well as employer associations, supported this bill. Well, of course it makes sense that the employer associations are going to support this bill if your boss and the government are making a law for the workers, then you know who's about to cry, and it's not going to be your boss. The bill does other beautiful things like cutting continuous 15-day vacations, because who needs a break for 15 days? You should just get one day off, sleep it out, and then continue working 13-hour shifts. And it also expands the terms of a flexible contract, making the relationship between employer and employee even more flexible. It basically will mean that a lot of employers that currently have to pay overtime, and very often they don't, are now going to have the 13-hour daily shift to justify work practices that belong in the past century. Once again, Greece has become a resort for vacations of the rich, a place where the few can take advantage of the many, and a place that wants to be considered Western Europe. But if you look under the rug, if you look at any sensible statistics, from the freedom of press to the collapse of the social state, to the public healthcare defunding, to the inexistent rights for workers, minorities, mothers, you will see it's all a nice facade. Greece is great if you have money, connections, or both. But none of this will matter. None of this will matter because planet Earth has crossed the point of no return in coral reefs. And now you may ask, what is one thing that Kourtney Kardashian has in common with our coral reefs? And that is bleaching in their private parts. This is so horrible, but it's true. I didn't know about it. But let's talk about the coral reef bleaching and not any other type of bleaching. And as funny as I may sound, it's horrific. It's horrendous what is happening. Not in Kourtney Kardashian's type of bleaching, no, on the coral reef one. So here's the main fact. The global tipping point has been passed. 87 institutions, they all confirm that coral reefs are dying irreversibly now. They will all die out. I don't know if you remember, some years ago they were saying that we need to keep the global warming beneath 1.5 degrees, and that this is what will happen, what the models show that will happen, that we will reach a 1.5 extra degree that will completely change how ecosystems are working. Well, we haven't done anything to stop it. We're currently at 1.2 in terms of the global warming, and now the damage in the coral reefs is irreversible. This is the first big loss that the ecosystems will experience. It threatens entire marine ecosystems across the tropics. Coral reefs host a huge percentage of the world's fish. Basically, coral reefs are like the pit stops of fish as they do their journeys to mate, reproduce, and move during the year. Coral reefs are like stops They all stop there, they eat around, they socialize. They are like fish hubs. They are like the co-working space, one of these big ones that hosts a shit ton of different companies. This is what the coral reefs are. Without coral reefs, it's not only that fish don't have a pit stop, they don't even know how to navigate. So this is a new reality for Earth. You've heard about coral reefs, you've heard that they're dying. There is no way you've missed those types of news. They are the lifeline of a quarter of all marine life, but now they have crossed the tipping point. Even if global warming is limited to 1.5, most warm water reefs will still collapse. Now this will have a domino effect, and there's been warning for that for decades. The warnings were ignored and now it's finally happening. The reefs are bleaching, they're dying, they're disappearing, they're turning white and lifeless, and they're taking entire ecosystems with them. Next up will be the Amazon tipping point, when the rainforest will reach a stage it can no longer recover, turning it from a carbon sink, so from a place that is storing carbon, into a carbon source, a place that is emitting carbon. And this is something that can happen to any forest. Basically what this means is, if the trees are not growing fast enough, as trees grow, they take CO2. This is the chunk of a tree. It comes out of nothing, it collects CO2 from the atmosphere, and it builds the wood trunk. That's why we love trees. That's why when you hear other forms of capturing CO2, just remember we already have a great form of capturing CO2. It's called forests. But when we are cutting down forests faster than what the forest regrows, instead of having a carbon sink, like a place where carbon can be sucked up like a sponge, we actually have a carbon source. We're adding more carbon back in the air. So this is the second event of a tipping point that will be next in line. And the last scary one is the Atlantic Ocean circulation. It's called AMOC. So this is a bit more complicated, but basically there is a set of currents, warm water currents happening in the Atlantic between what is the US and Latin America, coming all the way to Europe. There are huge underwater warm currents, and basically they bring nutrients around, they bring fish around. And these currents, for reasons that I won't get into this podcast, are also close to stopping. If that circulation stops, then the effects are massive. But maybe this is another podcast episode to explain why the Atlantic Ocean circulation is being disrupted and how, in case it stops, the whole part of Northern Europe will freeze. I can put some links in the description. Sometimes you tell me I mention a lot of things you want to look further and I don't explain them enough. I don't want to ramble too much, but I can leave links for these 3 events. Just know that the coral reefs one is already happening. We're past that tipping point. We're not past the tipping point for the Amazon rainforest yet. We're not past the tipping point for the Atlantic Ocean circulation to stop, but these big events are next in line. And already the fact that this is happening in the coral reefs is devastating. It's mind-blowing how many people don't understand the impact. Everyone who does scuba diving will have experienced the bleaching of the coral reefs. I also saw it when we were diving in Japan. I don't want to get too grim. I also have a son to raise, but when the coral reefs die, slowly the ocean might die too. When it's time to activate the plan to go to the summer house and grow tomatoes, I will all let you know. And I will end the podcast with 2 quick pieces of news. One, around microplastics. I know, they suck. We have them inside of us, blah, blah, blah. And in all of these talks, the question is, what can I do about it? So, for microplastics and the exposure, in today's world, getting rid of all the plastic seems very difficult. But here's one thing that all researchers who work on microplastics agree. Keeping your plastic away from heat is a low-hanging fruit that can substantially lower your exposure. So, if you're heating up a meal, don't put it in a plastic container. If you are having a hot drink, don't put it in a plastic cup. If you have your kitchen utensils, don't use ones made out of plastic. Remember, the next time you're using plastic, try to keep it away from heat. Cold is good, but the heat is causing the tiny plastic imperfections that you cannot see. It looks all nice and soft, but if you zoom in, a lot. It's not. There are a lot of imperfections, and when those are exposed to heat, they break down. They break down into things that then we ingest. So this is the one piece of advice. And the last piece of news I saw, it's not a bad one, I promise. I know this is a grim week. Previous week was just all casino and stories. And by the way, since I shared the casino story, I get casino ads everywhere in the same way that I get exoskeleton ads everywhere because I mentioned it in one podcast. Whatever I mention in podcast comes following me right after. But here's the last piece of news. A Silicon Valley neurotech startup, it's called REM Space. They claim that they have achieved a two-way communication between two humans that were in a dream state. So this is something that others have tried before as well, to try and find someone in your dream. Did you ever have a crush or someone you loved, maybe in a time before phones and all that, and you could say, hey, I'll see you in my dreams, or come find me in my dreams? This is something that has been part of, poems and literature, and there are people trying to do that. And apparently a communication between two humans in dream state was achieved. This company claims to have done it. And what they are envisioning is a lucid dream communication. The two users managed to transmit one specific word to another while they were both asleep. And the CEO says this is a first step towards enabling real-time interpersonal communication in dreams, potentially reshaping how humans communicate in the future. Now, excuse me, can I just say, can we just leave something away? Can we leave some things alone? The one time in the day, the one activity where you can get to finally be on your own, the one time where you stop your phone from scrolling or your phone falls on your face while you're scrolling in bed. I know it has happened to you. I know you're not proud of it, and that's okay. It has happened to me, it has happened to everyone. But the one place where your brain actually shuts down, now they want to invade that? Leave my sleep alone. I don't want to communicate in my sleep. I don't want any interpersonal communication in my dreams. Can you just leave me alone? Let me rest. Let me disconnect. I communicate with people. I perceive information. I consume content all day. I almost feel jealous of the Greeks who need to work for 13 hours a day so they at least don't consume even more content because they are busy sweating and working. But is this the new frontier of science, just trying to hack our sleep so we communicate during that as well? We communicate all the freaking time. How about we do the opposite? How about we find a way to stop communicating and shut down our hungry, consuming, dopamine addict brains for a second instead of giving them more and more space to do their thing? This is me. This was a long one. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry for the depressing news. But hey, someone has to say it. I wish the only bleaching was happening in the private parts of mid-celebrities, but unfortunately it's not. One last thing, if you're interested to hear a 1+ hour interview of me as a person and not the person behind this podcast, I gave an interview to another podcast, and now you get to learn a little bit more about it. On the beginning of November, there will be an episode on the podcast I was a guest to called Untold Paths, the Untold Paths podcast. And the idea is that every person has a set of hidden skills and insights that are lying beneath the surface of the everyday life. So Untold Paths is a podcast that tries to uncover these surprising skills and insights through the guests' diverse careers and passions. It promises the listeners can discover knowledge they can use no matter what is their path. It's hosted by Sebastian Den Birds. I think I'm saying the surname correctly, pronouncing it correctly. I've known Seb for some years. We used to work in the same company long time ago. And I just want to say I loved being a guest at his podcast, not only because I get to talk for 1.5 hours, and I felt like the center of the attention. It is a weird thing. And what I mean about that is, how often are you the center of attention and how long does that last? It doesn't last long. Most people have to pay to be the center of attention, either a therapist or a stripper or I don't know. But it doesn't last long, and I felt so privileged to sit there for more than an hour with someone who enjoys listening to this podcast and had actually looked into different sides and nuances to bring in and make interesting conversation, bring intriguing questions, and my job was to just reply. So it felt really good. It was entertaining, it made me think, it made me laugh, and it made me appreciate Sebastian even more. So, Untold Paths is the podcast. It will come out in November. I will share the link in this podcast as well. I have been Ermis. This has been the Get Another Expat. Thanks for tuning in to my thoughts for one more week. I truly appreciate the fact that you're around. If you were not, I would not be doing this. I will now go and enjoy the last rays of sunshine of this weekend, and I wish you a relaxing week ahead. Until next time, ciao!